They told my child to wash the dishes during my father's funeral. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Don't forget to like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to this channel. Now back to my story. I never expected peace at my father's funeral. Ours was not a peaceful family, but I didn't expect to leave that day with a fire in my chest and my hands shaking. Not from grief, but from fury. The service had been brief, tight-lipped prayers, dry eulogies, and family members who hadn't called in years acting as if they carried the heaviest grief. I stood silently at the back with my daughter, Kyra, gripping her hand tightly. My father was gone. Whatever history we had, good, bad, confusing, was buried with him. After the burial, we headed to the church hall for food. People were already forming cliques. My Aunt Lydia was pretending to cry. Cousin Miriam avoided eye contact. The whispers started when I walked in, half pity, half disgust. I was pouring Kyra a drink when she slipped away. I assumed she went to find a quiet corner. Maybe look at old photos on the wall. 10 minutes passed, then 20, I started to worry. When I finally found her, I froze. My baby, 11-year-old daughter was in the kitchen, elbow deep in dishwater, scrubbing piles of greasy plates. Her eyes welled with tears when she saw me. They said I had to earn my plate. She said, voice trembling, that I couldn't just sit and eat like everyone else, that I should wash the dishes first, because we're not really family. I stared at her, then at the two women sitting nearby watching with approval, both my cousins. I didn't speak, I just took her hand, dried it gently, and walked her out. That day, I realized something. My father's death didn't break this family. They were already broken. And now, I wasn't going to keep pretending to be part of them. I didn't sleep that night. Kyra had curled up beside me, her little hand still damp from the tears she'd wiped away herself. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her soft breathing, and my mind replayed every insult, every cold shoulder, every silent moment of exclusion this family had thrown my way over the years. But this was a new low. They didn't just insult me anymore. They humiliated my child. The next morning, I sat with a blank notepad and started writing names. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I needed to know exactly who did what, who stood by, who watched it happen and said nothing. It wasn't just two cousins. The rot ran deeper. These weren't isolated events. Over the years, there were birthday parties we weren't invited to, group chats that I was mysteriously left out of, family dinners where I was asked to bring the plates, and told to help in the kitchen, while everyone else sat like royalty. I used to think it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe I was too sensitive. But now, I saw it for what it was. Rejection dressed up as tradition. I thought about my father, how he always seemed caught between defending me and keeping the peace. He never said much. Maybe now I knew why. Maybe he saw it coming, or maybe he never had the strength to stop it. But I did. Kyra deserved better. She deserved a family that didn't see her as the mistake her mother made. That's what they used to whisper about me. After all, that I chose the wrong man, that I moved too far, that I forgot my roots. No, they forgot their humanity. And now I was going to remind them, one truth at a time. The funeral hadn't even ended when the whispers began. I stepped outside for air and overheard my cousin Halima say to Aunt Isioma, "She shouldn't have come back, it's too late for that now." I didn't flinch. They thought grief would cloud my ears, make me fragile, soft, forgetful, but I heard everything. The way they said, she, as though I was a burden dragged in with the casket, as if burying my father wasn't reason enough for me to stand among my own blood. I turned the corner and saw them clustered in the hallway, my father's sisters and a few cousins. They stopped talking the moment they saw me, their eyes darting like roaches caught under light. "Didn't know you were there," Aunt Isioma muttered with that tight-lipped smile. "You always say more when you think I'm not," I replied, walking past them. I went back inside and found Kyra alone again. She was sitting on the same stool they had dragged her to, her small shoulders hunched. I crouched beside her. "Baby, where's Uncle Depot?" She looked at me confused. "They told me to stay here and not move, said I was in the way." In the way? At her own grandfather's funeral. That was the last straw. I stood and scanned the room, my eyes searching for Depot, my younger brother, the one person I thought might still stand by me. But he was with them, laughing, drinking palm wine. He saw me looking, raised his glass, and said, "You came late. They handled things." Late? I clenched my jaw. They'd planned this funeral like I never existed. My name wasn't on the program. I hadn't been asked to speak. Even the portrait they printed of my father was one taken after our estrangement, when I wasn't in his life. They'd already buried me too. Only I was still After the burial rites, they called a family meeting. I was summoned like a stranger. No one asked if I was ready, if I needed rest, or if Kyra was okay. We were crammed into Uncle Sei's parlor. The air was stale with sweat, grief, and old resentments. Depot sat at the center, like he was the head of the family now. Aunt Isioma was beside him, flanked by their favorite nieces and nephews. Kyra and I sat alone on the edge of the couch, like unwanted guests. Aunt Isioma began. As we all know, Baba left behind a house, land in Aloran, and his pension account. We must discuss how to manage things. I blinked. What about his will? Silence. Depot cleared his throat. There wasn't one. He told me he didn't want drama, said he trusted us to share things fairly. Fairly, from this crowd. But I was his daughter, I said. The firstborn, doesn't that count for anything? Aunt Isioma scoffed. You were gone. You abandoned him when he needed you. The rest of us were here, taking care of him. Now you want to claim rights. He stopped picking my calls. I snapped. He pushed me away after I left the family compound. You all know why. But they said nothing. Not one of them spoke up. I saw Kyra's hands tighten on the hem of her dress. Her eyes darted nervously. She could feel it too. The air was thick with something deeper than grief. Something rotting beneath the surface. Then Uncle Sei said it. Well, if you feel cheated, maybe you should go to court. It was a challenge. But I knew what they feared most. Not lawyers. Truths. I looked at them, every single one, and said, then let's dig everything up, starting with the real reason my father and I stopped speaking. Gasps, eyes widened. They thought I'd buried that secret forever. They were wrong. You could hear a pin drop after my declaration. Kyra reached for my hand. I held it tight, drawing strength from her small fingers. I'm not here to fight for land or money, I said, keeping my voice even. I just want the truth to be told. Since you all want to pretend we're a family that honors the dead. Aunt Isioma looked visibly shaken. But Depot recovered quickly. Truth. What truth, Temi? That you were always the disobedient one. That you abandoned your responsibilities as a daughter. I stood. The truth about why I left home. About what your precious Uncle Felix did to me when I was just 13. Gasps. A chair scraped. Aunt Isioma's face went pale. You swore you'd never speak of that again, she blurted. I swore to survive, I said. But now I realize silence only protected the guilty. Kyra was staring up at me now. Eyes wide, but I needed her to hear this too. You all watched as Baba turned his back on me the moment I spoke up. You told me to keep quiet, to forgive, to protect the family name. And when I couldn't, when I broke down and left, you called me ungrateful. Depot stood now too. That's enough. Temi, this is a family matter. No, I said coldly. This is my matter. You all told my child to wash dishes, while you toasted to my father. You reduced us to house helps because that's all you ever wanted us to be. Silent, submissive, forgotten. Uncle Sei walked out of the room. Aunt Isioma was shaking. And Depot clenched his jaw. If you're planning to bring this up publicly, be careful what you dig up. You might not like what you find. Neither will you, I replied. Because I'm not the scared girl you silenced 20 years ago. And for the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. Later that night, I sat in Baba's study, the one place in that house I had sworn never to return. The room smelled of old wood, dust, and forgotten dreams. Kyra sat on the floor nearby, quietly drawing, perhaps sensing that something bigger than her was unfolding. I ran my fingers across the bookshelf, pulling out titles he used to quote as scripture during family meetings. Politics, law, and legacy. Nothing on love, nothing on healing. Then I saw it. A framed photo of Baba in his military uniform. But behind the frame, barely tucked in, was a folded piece of paper. My instincts kicked in. I pried open the back carefully and slid it out. It was a letter, dated 2 weeks before his death. To the one I wronged most, Temelade. If you are reading this, it means you dare to return. And I hope it means I finally have the courage to face you, even in death. I know what happened. I know I failed you, not just as a father, but as a man. They told me it would ruin the family if I believed you. They said you were confused, but I knew, I always knew. I was a coward. I let tradition and pride bury the truth. And in doing so, I buried you too. I have written another letter for the lawyer. One that may cause a storm in this family, but it's one that might also cleanse us. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if you ever choose to give it, thank you. Baba. I sat in silence, my hands trembling, my eyes burning. He knew. He knew all along. And if he had the courage to admit it in the end, maybe it was time the whole family knew what else he had left behind. The next morning, the compound buzzed with preparations for the final burial rites. Guests had started arriving again, dressed in their finest lace and geal, pretending like yesterday's chaos never happened. But I wasn't pretending, not anymore. Clutching Baba's letter, I walked straight to the family parlor where the elders gathered, sipping palm wine and discussing land issues as though grief could be paused. "I need to speak," I said, loud enough to cut through the chatter. They turned, surprised to see me, Tamalade. The disgraced daughter, the rebel, the forgotten one. My uncle Adebio frowned. "This is not your place." "Not my place," I held up the letter. "Baba thought it was." Silence fell. I watched eyes widen as I unfolded the letter and began to read it aloud. The room changed with every line: shock, guilt, discomfort. Some couldn't meet my gaze. When I finished, I pulled out the final card. "There's a second letter." Baba gave it to his lawyer. Murmurs erupted. Aunt Ronk, who had once accused me of stealing money as a teenager, stood and shouted, "That's impossible. The will was read last week. Nothing was mentioned." I turned to her, calm but deliberate. "Then explain why the lawyer called me this morning. There's a sealed envelope in his office, dated the same day as this letter." My cousin Toulouse stood up, suddenly pale. "There must be a mistake." "No," I said, "there's finally clarity." The room erupted into arguments, some accusing me of forging the letter, others begging to see what was in the lawyer's envelope. But I wasn't there to beg or plead. I simply said, "The truth always shows up, even if you bury it." I walked out of that room with my daughter by my side. It was time for the real funeral, of secrets, shame, and silence. The next day, I dressed in black, not for mourning but for war. When I arrived at the lawyer's office, the receptionist's demeanor shifted as soon as I said my name. She stood and ushered me in without delay. Mr. Ajala, a graying man with a voice like gravel and eyes like glass, rose to greet me. "I knew you'd come," he said, unlocking a drawer and pulling out a thick brown envelope. "It was meant to be read publicly." He continued, "But your uncle intercepted the original meeting and convinced everyone the will was already handled." He shook his head. "That man has been circling your father's estate like a vulture for years." He handed me the envelope. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but the weight of finally being seen. I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten will, notarized and signed, dated only a week before Baba's death. I scanned through it, heart pounding. My father had left the ancestral land in Ilara to me, land my uncle Adebio claimed was his by tradition. He had also allocated a substantial sum from his pension to be held in trust for my daughter. Adenola, he wrote of his regrets, of how he allowed shame and pride to separate us, and how he watched silently as I was cast out, hoping I would one day return, not for forgiveness but for restoration. Tears blurred my vision. "You'll need security," Mr. Ajala warned. "They won't take this lightly." I nodded. "Let them come, I have nothing to lose." As I stepped outside into the Lagos heat, the sun broke through the clouds. For the first time in years, I felt its warmth on my skin, not as an outsider, but as the daughter my father finally chose to honor. But I also knew, my uncles wouldn't let this go without a fight, and neither would I. The family meeting was called for a Saturday evening, just before dusk. It was supposed to be peaceful, a time for clarification after the reading of the will. But I knew better. These people didn't want peace. They wanted silence. When I arrived at the family compound, the courtyard was full. Plastic chairs were arranged in a large circle. The elders sat on one side, whispering among themselves. My uncles didn't even look at me when I entered. My Aunt Funk approached me. "Adunni, please," she whispered. "Try not to provoke them." I didn't respond. I didn't come here to beg. The head of the family, Pa Aluder, an elder with a face carved by time, called everyone to order. "Let us speak like family," he began. "There has been confusion surrounding the will. It is best we clarify what our late brother wanted." Uncle Adebio stood, puffing with false authority. "With due respect, Baba was old and not thinking clearly. That land belongs to the family, not to one person." I rose slowly. He was thinking clearly. "I have the notarized documents and the bank statement for Adenola's trust fund." Baba was very clear. There were murmurs. Then, like lightning, Uncle Kehind burst out. "You think because you're back now, you can claim what we've protected all these years." "Protected," I scoffed. "You mean manipulated, lied about, stolen." The room crackled with tension. I stepped forward. "You all told my child to wash dishes during the funeral of the man who named her his heir. You shamed me in front of strangers. And yet, here I stand." "Enough," Uncle Adebio shouted. "If you push this, you'll regret it." I looked him dead in the eye. I already have, and I survived it. There was silence, not of agreement, but of recognition. The storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. The silence after the family meeting didn't last long. By the next morning, rumors were flying. I heard from neighbors, from church friends, even from a Denola's teacher. They say you forged the will. They say your child isn't even your father's real granddaughter. They say you only came back to disgrace the family. Everywhere I turned, someone had swallowed a lie and spit it back out as fact. I should have been shattered. Instead, I felt something else rising in me, resolve. I gathered all the evidence Baba had given me, documents, voice notes, video recordings he made weeks before his death. He knew they would come for me. He had prepared for this. I called a press conference. Yes, a real one. I invited a few trusted journalists, some of Baba's old friends, and local authorities. I sat in front of cameras, holding my daughter's hand, and I told our truth. I played the recording where Baba said, Adani is my child. Her daughter is my only grandchild. I leave everything to them, not because I owe them, but because they're the only ones who ever truly loved me. The media ate it up. The fallout was immediate. Uncle Adebio lost his job, turns out. Some of Baba's business funds had been rerouted to a shady account in his name. Uncle Kehind was arrested for attempting to forge additional documents to claim the land. The others who once mocked and insulted me now lowered their heads when I passed. But I didn't do it for revenge. I did it so my daughter would know that silence is not always golden. Sometimes it's a weapon used by cowards. And now, we live in the house my father left us. It's quiet here, safe. Sometimes a Denola plays in the garden, humming the hymn Baba used to sing. Justice didn't fix the scars, but it helped us heal. And that was enough. Please like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories. Thank you.